More spring outlooks on the way. We have 3 Big Ten teams. We're going to kind of continue the theme of the Big Ten because I know this past Thursday we went over 4 Big Ten teams with Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, and USC. Go back and watch that episode. That was a phenomenal episode. I am curious to see how they're all going to do in spring, but we have 3 interesting ones on top of a, independent team that is very motivated. And if you know by independent, you already know who we're talking about. Notre Dame. Indiana, the defending national champions. We have Penn State, and are we going to see the reemerging Michigan State Spartans just come to life once again? We're going to talk about what we want to see from these teams during the spring with our reoccurring guest correspondent, Trent Ritchie. Guys, we are super fired up. Welcome to Pigskin Frenzy on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris, and whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, listening on Podbean or Apple, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by us. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. All you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X and Instagram and TikTok is at Pigskin_Frenzy. You're going to get wild takes from the prodigy of college football himself. You're going to get a lot of clips from Pigskin Frenzy, and you're going to get episode updates from Pigskin Frenzy as well. At Pigskin_Frenzy on all social media platforms, and the website is www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. We are ready to rock and roll with some more spring outlooks. We're super fired up to be joined once again by our reoccurring correspondent for Pigskin Frenzy, none other than Trent Ritchie. Another golf clap for our good friend Trent here. Welcome to the Pigskin Frenzy, Trent. What's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm really excited to get back at it and talk some Big Ten teams today, man. Big Ten, and then we got our favorite in the independent.
Absolutely, man. And I know that you're here with us for the all of our spring outlooks, man. But I mean, these are kind of teams that we look at least a few of them that we look at. Okay, very interesting because you got some coaching changes in a couple of them. You got one who came off of a historic season, national championship season, that a lot of people thought, hey, they're just a basketball school. Well, they're kind of a football school now. And then you got one team that's just motivated by, okay, we want to go out here and just throttle everybody now after what happened to us last season. So it's going to be a very, very interesting spring, and as we head in to the 2026 season as well. So we're going to kick it off, man. We're going to kick it off with a team that really is motivated, I would seem, and it's none other than the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I said a few weeks back that I would not be surprised if this team would be the number 1 team heading into the 2026 season. I said that a few weeks ago, talking about how good they were at recruiting because they had a really good recruiting class. They did okay in the portal, mainly in high school recruiting was their area or expertise, though. But they bring back a lot of guys. They bring in some guys, receiving core-wise, they bring some guys in through the portal that are really good. Apologies for the last episode. We said Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham were with Ohio State. It was the opposite, so that was on me. That was Joel Norris's fault. And I apologize for that. But those guys are also with Notre Dame. But you also get Jaden Greathouse back as the senior wide receiver as well, playing in the slot. He will be a force to be reckoned with, along with C.J. Carr coming back as sophomore quarterback. There's no debate on who's going to be the quarterback there. No, transfer portal, anything like that with how it was with Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard. And no, it's C.J. Carr. He is we're going to have a quarterback for the first time in a couple of years for Notre Dame with more than just 1 year of starting. He's going to start majority, so which is pretty good. Got that. The season started out great for Notre Dame didn't start out great for Notre Dame last year. Yeah, they started off 0-2 with that decisive key game against Miami that played we didn't think it was going to play a big part, but it came all full circle at the end of the year when they got knocked out of the playoff for Miami because of that loss against Miami. And then you also had that A&M loss in week 3. But throughout the whole rest of the schedule, in some games they look kind of Boston College, to be exact. That was one. And there was a lot of games where they just ran through everybody. Arkansas, Navy, Stanford, Syracuse, to be exact. That game was stupid. I mean, why did we play that game? But and then all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, due to the schedule, how can you deny Notre Dame? How can you deny them? Until Miami started to reemerge a little bit, and you're thinking, okay, thought Miami was dead out of the water until they weren't, and they won out. And that was the thing that Notre Dame fans did not want, and Miami was chosen over Notre Dame in the CFP. They didn't go to a bowl game. They opted out, and now here we are heading into spring, motivated, and they're motivated and ready to rock and roll. Great recruiting class, a lot of players coming back, super talented. New co-defensive coordinator to help out Chris Ash as well. Trent, I'm going to start with you on Notre Dame. What are you looking forward to seeing in the spring for Notre Dame? And is there anything that kind of jumps off to you about Notre Dame?
Yeah. So when it comes to Notre Dame, my one word would be motivation. I see a lot of motivation there, a lot of potential, especially coming off of a really crushing, miss in the CFP and not being able to get in over Miami, which I think to the committees, and all fairness to them, I do think that was a very justified, leave out in terms of Notre Dame not making the CFP. However, when you look at this year, you see the fact that Marcus Freeman really went to the team and talked to them about that opt-out. And you saw a lot of Marcus Freeman justifying the team's decision, especially, the seniors on the team that decided to opt out of that bowl game. And I think secretly they are using that as a weapon. They are using that as a way to not only motivate the guys who are going to start coming into their starting roles this year, but guys like Jaden Greathouse, who, had a rough year last year, had a hamstring injury, no touchdowns on the season, had it really tough trying to keep healthy. And even guys like CJ Carr, who, had a great season. He was, 24-6, 66% completion. He did awesome for a freshman last year, but leaned really heavily on Jeremiah Love and that run game. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it is going to come down a lot to motivation. However, some things to keep an eye on in terms of my 2 and 3 spot would be their secondary, absolutely loaded. They're getting Jaden Sanders out of Michigan, and they're saying he may not even start, oddly enough, because of how loaded that secondary is. And I think thirdly would be the continuity with the coaching. I think, like you said, they have one of the most talented staffs in the league. They've got Marcus Freeman, who is getting a lot of attention from the pros, a lot of attention from other schools and other programs that really wanted to poach him away. And he has been devoted to the Fighting Irish and the Fighting Irish only. And, all respect in the world to him for that. I think he's built a really steady program, especially after losing someone who had as much repertoire within the program as Brian Kelly did. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to cohesion from the coaching staff, a really, really powerful secondary, and a heck of a lot of motivation coming off of the big miss out last year for the CFP playoffs.
Oh, 100%. And they're going to be, and that's what they're going to be driven by. So motivation. And that's kind of like piggybacking off of you. That's really where I was going to pick off too. And just start off. I mean, number one, how motivated are they going to be heading into the spring? How locked in are they going to be? I know they're hearing everything. I know they saw everything. I know that a lot of those guys that are coming back are probably coming back for that very reason. They're coming back to play and try to get into the playoff because, hey, you knocked us out last year. We're going to make sure that, hey, we're not going to be denied this year, right? Yeah. That's number one. I think that's the number one thing for me. Number two, I kind of want to see the running game take shape. I know. I know that it's going to be like, dude, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and you got Juwan Snyder there. I mean, I think Juwan Snyder, he should be all right, right? All right. Yeah, he's the best running back coach probably in college football. However, losing Jeremiah Love and losing Jadarian Price, that's a pretty big hit. So who's going to really step up in the running back room? I know it's looking, from what we see, is going to be like Anais Williams coming back. It's looking like it's going to be him taking over at the running back spot for them as well. So I kind of want to see how he does, and just besides Anais Williams, who else steps up for Notre Dame, right, at the running back spot behind him. So I kind of want to see how the running game is going to look heading into the spring as well. That's number two for me. I think some key departures. I know their secondary is still going to be loaded. I still want to see, obviously, about linebacker mainly for Notre Dame. I want to see what's going on there, the depth of the linebacker spot for them. I know they got some good players, but I kind of want to see how the depth of the linebacker spot for them is going to be. So that's really my number 3 spring outlook for Notre Dame. Honestly, there's not really a lot you can hate on about this team because when you look at their roster, they're very loaded. I would like to and I said I was going to add this a little bit ago, kind of a point A, point B on the third, spring outlook point that I got. Point B is the continued development of CJ Carr. I know CJ Carr is played, actually, like you said before, you said an off-air, camera, you said 6 turnovers, I believe, before for CJ Carr. So credit to Trent for that one, guys. I mean, 6 turnovers. As a freshman, is not all that bad. Yeah, that's not too bad. So what's he going to do as a sophomore, right?
Yep.
So that's just the development of him, and especially because he's got so many weapons around him with Great House, with a Graham, with a Porter. You could even add, if he comes off the bench, you can even add a Devin Fitzgerald in there. Shout out to Larry Fitzgerald, legend, man. He's such a legend. I love Larry Fitzgerald, but shout out to him. Shout out to Devin Fitzgerald. You can even add them there. So Cam Williams, you can add him into the mix as well. You got some weapons for this team. Just how is CJ Carr going to develop even more during the spring? So that's really my outlooks. Honestly, on Notre Dame. I do have a question before we move on to Indiana and Penn State and Michigan State, though. What do you think of CJ Carr overall? Are you more high on him going into this year? Do you feel more confident in him in his ability to be like a top quarterback in college football?
Yeah, you know what? Early on in the show, especially, coming on to Pigskin as early as I did, I really tend to kind of take a lot of points off of CJ Carr, especially because, he was a freshman. He leaned a lot on the run game. You could tell his decision-making was really sound, but there wasn't a lot of exploration of the playbook with him. There wasn't a lot of going outside the lines, going outside the hashes. There wasn't a lot of deep throws from him. There wasn't really a lot of advanced schematics within the playbook. I noticed they were really kind of shielding him, letting Jeremiah Love do his thing, riding him, to success. And I think that worked until obviously, the very last game of the season where, come to find out, they decided Miami was the way to go. And I think this year they're really going to be looking to make a lot of these games on their schedule statement games. I mean, you got Wisconsin week 1 at Lambeau. I think they're going to want to put on a show there, especially with it being a neutral site and then having a lot of, press coming into this season, especially surrounding the end of last season and how that turned out for them. I really think, CJ Carr at 24-6, I think if you can get him up to 30 touchdowns and you keep his interceptions low and you get him up to about 70% completion on the year, I think they're really not going to have a whole lot of trouble. And they have some big games on their schedule. They're at BYU this year. They've got Miami in South Bend later in the year. And so it's going to be tough. But you know what? I think if they can steal one of those 2 games and keep the trap games like SMU at the end of the season away, I think they've really got a good chance to make some success this year and to right the wrongs of the previous year.
Oh, 100%, man. Notre Dame, spring outlook on Notre Dame. I know we've discussed the first 12, 13 minutes of the show with Notre Dame, but wrapping it up with Notre Dame before we go on to the other 3 teams, man. Number 1, honestly, is the motivation. How motivated are they going to be heading into the spring and as we get ready for spring practice? Are they going to use that as fuel to have great practices? Or are they going to let it cloud their judgment and not really? Are they going to underperform and underwhelm in spring? Who knows? Due to that, we'll see. Can it blind them? Who knows? We just want to see how that's going to affect them in the spring. That's number 1. Number 2, I want to see the running backs, and I want to see the running game, how it's going to, take shape. Now that there's no Jeremiah Love, now that there's no Jadarian Price, let's see what Anais Williams can do. And if anybody else can add, step up and make an impact behind Anais Williams as well. And then number 3, point A would be the linebacker spot and the depth of the linebacker spot. And then point B would be the continued development of CJ Carr. So Notre Dame's spring game is going to be on April 25th. I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, April 25th at 2 Eastern, 1 Central. They will probably begin, as far as I know, they're beginning their practice or spring practices, I believe, on, I think it's 17th, coming up next week is on St. Patrick's Day. So we'll see in a month's time, and we'll talk about in a month's time Notre Dame, and give them, everybody else here who's listening to the show, their spring results on them. So that is Notre Dame's spring outlook. Let's move on to a team that is also in Indiana, and it's in Bloomington, Indiana, central Indiana. It is the Indiana Hoosiers, the defending national champions from last year. Now we're going on to our Big Ten teams, and it is a good – honestly, I know we started with Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, and USC, but we probably, in all fairness, disrespect by us, should have started in reverence with the defending national champions. We should have started with Indiana. So, Kirk Cinetti, if you're listening and you're watching this, I apologize. But we're going to give you a good outlook here. So, I mean, there's nothing else you can say about recapping their season last year. I mean, they went undefeated, beat everybody up. Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman Trophy. Yep. They win the national championship. They make history. The first 16-0 team in 180-plus years since Yale. And back in the late 1800s, just crazy, right? Just insane. And you were thinking, wait, Clemson said they were going to do that. This team said they were going to do that. No, it was Indiana. Google them. They win, right? They win. And we're going to see if that testament continues into 2026. No Fernando Mendoza. No Mendoza, period. No Alberto Mendoza. He's at Georgia Tech now. You get the new kid in town coming in from TCU, who back in last July, I said that he could have been a breakout quarterback in the Big 12, Josh Hoover from TCU. He didn't play too terrible. He wasn't great and phenomenal, but he wasn't terrible. He made some plays with his feet. He made some plays with his legs that you look, and in his arm that you're thinking, okay, like, it may not be a bad get for Indiana. Right? So, and a lot of people are already ranking him the number 1 portal acquisition on a lot of lists. I believe ESPN ranked him number 1 on the list as well. But you get Josh Hoover. You do lose a Hemby and a Black at running back, but you get Turbo Richard at running back as well now. So we can see how their running game is going to be. But Indiana coming in 2026. So 2 questions. This is, and you can call me out on this as well. Number 1, what is your spring outlook on Indiana? What are you excited about seeing from Indiana? And then number 2, on the back half of that, do you think going into 2026, early on and heading into the spring, are they undervalued? Do you think they're underlooked?
So I'm actually going to take your number 2 question to start off, and I'm going to say immediately, yes, they're underlooked already. You can see the makings of what Indiana had in their first year starting to pop up again, and that is they're giving a lot of credit to Fernando Mendoza, rightfully so, but they are really losing, especially the big media outlets, are losing sight of what the achievement that Curt Cignetti did last year really meant to not only Bloomington, but to the college football world in general. I think that was a massive achievement, especially for a program that was looked at as kind of the doorstop of the Big Ten in the past. Very, very much so. They were not a program that you looked at and really had any fear going into those games, even playing in Bloomington. Now, you don't even want to play them at home, and rightfully so. I think the get of Josh Hoover from TCU is massive for the program. I think they really see a lot of potential in him. His arm is fantastic. You really saw a lot of deep ball plays with him at TCU, and that was really lacking the weapons that he's going to have available to him within Indiana. I think his decision-making downfield was excellent as well. I saw a lot of really good reads, a lot of really matured plays, especially toward the latter half of this year. You could tell he was really looking at the field differently than he was even from the previous year. And he's still a young guy. He's still got some eligibility left, and he's hoping to play that out and make the CFP with Indiana, which I think is very likely. I think he's coming into a system that is run by Curt Cignetti, and ultimately that is my number 2 point, and that is going to be the main thing, is that Curt Cignetti is the coach of that football team. As long as Curt Cignetti is the coach of Indiana, there is no need to worry if you are a fan in Bloomington. He wins the big games. He wins the small games. He wins them by a lot. There is nothing else to be said about him, and especially coming into a game like the Peach Bowl against Oregon, you saw a massive blowout of a team that was considered a rival earlier in the year. It was only a 10-point win. It was one of their closer ones. It was one of their, down-to-the-wire games, and yet again, he profited off of the mistakes of Dante Moore and made Oregon look like they were second class compared to what was going on in Bloomington. And that being said, his transfer portal this year was also excellent. Like you said, he added Turbo Richardson out of the backfield, and the most underrated portal get being Nick Marsh out of Michigan State. He's very fast. He caught some touchdowns this year, I believe 6 if I'm not correct. He was productive on the field, but ultimately what Curt Cignetti is going to be looking for is separation. He is going to be looking for deep ball threats for a guy who has a heck of an arm, just like Mendoza did, but he is not as cerebral as Mendoza was. He is much more athletically gifted and much more of a quarterback that has matured into the role that he's in. And I think that they're going to be looking for a real deep ball threat, and I think they're going to find that in Nick Marsh. So my 3 points for them would be coaching, the development of Josh Hoover, and the major get that he was to that city, and ultimately their other transfer portal grabs like Nick Marsh and Turbo Richardson.
100%, man, and I'm kind of following along and piggybacking on your settlement with your points there, because I mean, number one for me would be the development of Josh Hoover. I would like to see how even more developed he's going to be, because he was good at TCU. I thought he was going to break out even more than I thought he would. I did think he broke out some, but not to the point where I thought he was going to break out. I think he has a shot to do that at Indiana. And with Curt Cignetti, and with Mike Shanahan, and with Brian Haynes all coming back at the coordinator spot, they're getting all their coordinators back.
Yep.
So that's scary, right? When you look at it, and Brian Haynes won the Broyles Award last year, so for the 2025 year. So I know that's defensive coordinator, but still, you get Mike Shanahan back for Josh Hoover. So the development of Josh Hoover, that's going to be number one for me. How well will he fit into that system as an Indiana Hoosier? That's number one. Number two for me would be the defensive and the secondary spot. You get A.J. Harris coming in at corner. I get it. But who is going to take the reins and step up behind him, right? And I think that's what I kind of want to see around the secondary for Indiana. So that's number two. I think number three would be probably, the receiving core besides Nick Marsh. I want to see some of the depth of the receiving core that Indiana has to offer besides just Nick Marsh. I think Nick Marsh is going to be a good player. I think he's probably going to be the go-to guy for Josh Hoover. I mean, I think Nick Marsh would be a go-to guy for a lot of people at a lot of schools, because he was a really a receiver that a lot of people didn't talk about last year at Michigan State, but he made some dynamic plays for Michigan State's offense.
Yeah.
What's going to happen, if, you have Nick Marsh, but you got to have other people to throw to as well. So who's going to step up at the receiving core and help Josh Hoover out at Indiana, receiving-wise? So those are really my 3 points, what I want to see from the spring for Indiana. I'm not worried about the offensive line. Last year I was concerned. I'm not this year. I think they're going to be good on the offensive line. I think they're going to be good defensive line-wise. I think they're going to be good at the linebacker spot. I think they're going to be loaded in the aspect of being a physical team. I just want to see what's going to happen in the secondary. That's number one, how they're going to retool the secondary. Number two, development of Josh Hoover. And then number three, the depth of the receiving core behind Nick Marsh. So that's my spring outlook on Indiana. I know their spring game is an interesting date. It's April 23rd, which is on a Thursday. It goes along with I believe this is a kind of a tradition, the Little 500 races, race car races that happen on that weekend. So it's kind of like a big family event thing in Bloomington that happens along with the Indiana spring game. So Kirk Cignetti already embracing, well, he's been embracing, but again, keeping on embracing the city of Bloomington, especially after winning that national championship. So that's our Indiana spring outlooks. I believe we have really no other questions or even other thoughts about Indiana, honestly. I think they're going to be in the top 10 when we start. I think that the defending national champions, I believe they play North Texas to start their season, if I'm correct, right?
Yes, they do. Yep. They play North Texas to start the season. But I think an important thing about their schedule to piggyback off of is you've got Ohio State at home, and then you've got at Michigan the following week. And I think that is going to be a big 2-game stretch for them. I think it's going to determine a lot of their season because while you've got USC second to last game of the season at home, USC, I mean, they could be dead in the water by then. We don't really know. And with USC's history, kind of them losing a big game midseason and being really out of CFP contention by end of season, they could look to play spoiler. But if you're able to get one of those games against either Ohio State or, get Kyle Whittingham to kind of realize what he's playing in Indiana and beat him at home in Ann Arbor, I think that's really a big deal for them. And I think especially when you've got a new quarterback like Josh Hoover coming into the building, that could be a real stepping stone to build some real confidence and poise within that team.
Absolutely, man. Hey, look, Google them. They win, right?
They
win. And then not only that, they win championships now.
Yep.
So not only do they win, Trent, they win titles.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Football school, guys. I said it a few weeks back when they won the national title. I said they're no longer just a basketball school. They are a football school now, man.
Yep.
So you just got to put respect on them.
And I tell you what, it is because of things like you mentioned earlier with their work in the trenches on the offensive and defensive line. That is what truly fundamentally sound coaches like Cignetti do, and what we've seen in the past with programs like Alabama and Nick Saban. You see that kind of development on those fronts, and you see a team that is physical in the run game, that is even physical in the passing game, and has a lot of potential to do some major damage come CFP.
Top 5 coach in college football. There's no doubt about that.
There's
no doubt about that. Top 5 coach in the sport. So hope to have Coach Cignetti on soon. Hope to have Cignetti on. He is amazing. Good coach, man. Let's move on. Let's talk about Penn State, and we'll go to Michigan State at the end. But Penn State, our next team up, our third team on for our spring outlooks for this episode. A team that we thought, or at least I thought, I don't know about you, I thought was going to be, at least when they started off, I mean, listen, I picked Texas 1, Penn State 2 to start off the 2025 season. Had it right? I mean, I got it right at first, but I thought they were going to be a playoff team. I mean, coming off of what they did the prior season, and you're like, oh, man, I mean, so close to making a semifinal, so close.
Yep.
And then you look and you're thinking, okay, they're probably going to make it to the national championship at this point. They're going to win the Big Ten. I thought they were going to win the Big Ten. And then when they start playing, you see their offense starts to, okay, it's not like, okay, Drew Allard is playing terrible, but you can tell the offense with Andy Kolenicki is just like, okay, there's not glue. There's nothing strong there, if that makes sense. There's nothing clicking. And then it's like, okay, you see Villanova, you see all these games, and you're like, it's scary. Like, what's happening here, right? They're playing Oregon in a couple of weeks. We got to, shape up. And then the Oregon game arrives. It's a whiteout. Dan Lanning, all, big-eyed and pumped and energetic. Looked like he's drank a bunch of coffee, it seemed like. He was super fired up for this game. And I know Penn State was at first as well. Oregon was, dealing some blows with them physically. And not only that, just offensively as well with Dante Moore. They go into overtime because Penn State scores late. Finally, they come back in it. They go into overtime, double overtime to be exact. Oregon, scores, right? I believe the score was like, 30-27. If I'm not mistaken, or 30-24, I believe was the score around there. And then all of a sudden in double overtime, Aller goes back to throw, and then turnover, and Oregon wins the game. And then it kind of brings you PTSD or traumatic flashbacks to, oh no, we're looking at Notre Dame all over again.
Yep.
And you're like, man, okay. And you think, okay, look, we're gonna bounce back. That's that's the end of that. Well, turns out it wasn't the end of it after all. Next week rolls around for week 6, then you're saying UCLA, a team that, okay, they just got rid of their coach in week 3. I believe the interim coach was Tim Skipper, and then Jerry Neuheisel was the interim OC. And you're like, all right, here we go. We're ready to rock and roll. Penn State should come out and get some revenge on this team. UCLA puts on the score fest, and Penn State did not know what to do. They were struggling. I think it was like 24-7, close to 30, or either 31-7 at half, and it was rough. Penn State storms back. UCLA ends up winning the game anyway. Then you're stunned because that's a back-to-back loss for Penn State. You're pretty much on the verge of being unranked, and not only that, you're in do-or-die mode at that point. And then the third following week, they end up losing to David Braun and Northwestern in an upset. And you're thinking, okay, they got eliminated. And then the thing that shocked everybody the most, the next day happened. James Franklin has been let go of his duties as Penn State head coach. I was stunned. I think a lot of people were stunned. And then throughout the season, Terry Smith was the not only he was the interim coach for that team, and not only that, you find out that Drew Aller was going to miss the rest of his season, and that was the end of his college career there. That happens. You have good games like Indiana. Ethan Grunkemeyer steps up, which he's now at Virginia Tech, which I'm pretty sure Virginia Tech fans saw him at Penn State, and they're excited to see him at Broad Tech now. By the way, he played at the back half of the season because they played really good at the back half of the year, played with a lot of heart. And then they won their bowl game against Clemson, and they made a bowl game. That was pretty good. They made a bowl game. That was it. The one thing that they were struggling with was finding a head coach. Pat Kraft was trying to find a head coach throughout this whole process, and it could have almost cost him his job, it seemed like, because a lot of people were really stressing out. Like, okay, you get Lane Kiffin going to LSU, you have John Summerall going to Florida, you have a lot of these coaches going. We wanted DeBoer, couldn't get DeBoer. We wanted this guy, couldn't get this guy. Now it's like, who are we going to get, right? Because we're at a loss for words here. At one point, there were rumors about Kalani Sitake from BYU going to Penn State. And it's like, I don't see that happening. Different. And then you see one name, and it was Matt Campbell from Iowa State. And then Josh Pate, the commissioner of college football, was saying, keep on pushing. Why don't you go out and get Matt Campbell? All of a sudden, the rumblings happen, and they decided, we're going to take a shot at Matt Campbell, and they hired him. So Matt Campbell's the new head coach of Penn State. Whole new coaching staff. Jim Knowles at Tennessee now as the DC. No longer there. They get Deontay Lynn from USC. Now as the DC, he's homeboy from Penn State. Now at Penn State as the DC, and you get really Terry Smith's back on staff as the associate head coach and assistant head coach there. Offensive coordinator is Taylor Mauser, obviously from Iowa State. So you get your Iowa State staff in there now at Penn State. Rocco Beck transferring in there at quarterback. And now, after all of my talking as well, I do want to start with you. I know general manager Derek Hudiger from as the GM there, football chief of staff is Skip Brabenec from Penn State as well. So those are some key pieces there for that staff. So I do want to just start with you because I know it was kind of iffy during the offseason. Your spring outlooks. What are you excited about seeing from Penn State during the spring? And what kind of jumps out to you about Penn State heading into 2026 and in the spring?
So my spring outlook going in to talking about Penn State would be obviously the new regime change. You got Matt Campbell coming in. You've let go of James Franklin. He is now with Virginia Tech, which I think is a great move for him. And honestly, I think unfortunately not a great move for Penn State, which I'll get to later. However, I think looking at this, you go into it and you're thinking, okay, Matt Campbell has to be better than what you had in James Franklin. James Franklin had 6 10-win seasons. He was 104-45 at Penn State. Great record. Had some really big wins, had a CFP semifinal appearance, the previous year against Notre Dame. But I think ultimately you're looking for Matt Campbell to take the reins and really bring you to that next level. And unfortunately, I think with Matt Campbell's past at Iowa State, I don't really see that being the case. However, I do think Penn State fans have a reason to be excited. I think they have a reason to look at this guy and say, you know what, we see potential here. He's brought in a lot of guys from Iowa State. He's brought in Rocco Becht, who had, a great season last year for the most part. I think he started off pretty hot and had it a little rough towards the end of the season, which is okay. He's still developing as a quarterback, 16-9, touchdown interception ratio. I think you could have used a little less on the turnover side. It seemed like he had some problems with his progressions. He wasn't really keeping his eyes downfield, especially with the kind of pressure that you were getting out of the Big 12. And that was an issue, the previous year against ASU as well in the Big 12 championship game. You saw a lot of regression in the big moments from Rocco Becht, and that's something that Penn State fans have been used to with Drew Aller in previous years as well. And I think that that's going to be something that they're going to want to pay attention to within the new regime change. I think D'Anton Lynn out of USC was a great pickup. He runs a 3-4 with a 4-2-5 sort of morph into his defense. He runs a lot of, aggressive blitzes through the nickel. He's a really, really smart guy, and I could see a lot of potential there, especially bringing in guys like Caleb Bacon from Iowa State as well. I think he's a great field manager. He's a great linebacker that really knows how to read the field and really knows how to look at a QB's eyes and read where he is going to be looking, where he's going to be going, which is going to be very important when you have big games on your schedule, especially towards the middle part of the season when you've got USC, which is going to be a massive game for them. However, I think some other points I've got to bring up is there has been a lot of roster turnover. I think that is going to be a big deal, especially within a regime change. You really weren't able to keep guys from the previous regime. There was not a lot of excitement in the building, especially from guys like Grunkemeyer, who went over to Virginia Tech. You saw a lot of guys really vying for Franklin's voice back in the building, and I think that says a lot about the actual firing itself, which would be sort of my final point, which is that mentally they need to put the James Franklin era behind them. They need to really buy into this new coach. There needs to be buy-in on both sides of the ball, buy-in from the young and the veterans. I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue, especially if they get on a big losing streak with the kind of schedule that they have. They really can't afford to have a whole lot of losses. You've got your two big games against USC and then at Michigan. But I'm kind of wondering if you lose both of those games and you're down 2 losses and you're really on the outside looking in the CFP, I wonder if there is going to be some good faith lost in the building towards Matt Campbell. Not that I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for a great season out of him, as I do with all coaches, but I think that I see this being a bit of a lateral move, and I'm wondering if the Penn State fan base and the Penn State management can really recover from losing someone like Franklin. And I wonder that maybe that's not the case, especially coming in with Matt Campbell, who had a really rough season at Iowa State last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I'm gonna kind of it's not trying to copy you, Trent, but
well, I get it. You gotta follow what I'm doing a little bit too, because I'm taking up too much of your airwaves here, man.
No, man, you're not, dude. You're doing good. You can speak as much as you want, man. I'm just listening, man.
Awesome.
You can talk as long as you want to. I know that I'm gonna piggyback off of what you're saying off of D'Anton Lynn, because I'm curious about how he can just change the defensive system, that going from a Jim Knowles type system to going from his type system, right? I want to see what his defensive scheme looks like and how it's going to translate in the spring for Penn State's defense, right? I know what he's done at USC. I know. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I want to see how it translates to Penn State, right?
Yeah.
So that's a number one for me, is what's the defense looking like? How's that going to translate for Penn State overall? Number two, I do want to see who's going to step up in the running game following the departures of Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. I do want to see what's going on there. I do know they do have some good backs, and the thing is, they did actually pretty well in the portal too. They have guys like Cam Wallace, Quentin Martin Jr. As I'm looking at just through their depth chart, they have guys like that on their, you know, at their depth chart for the running back spot. So I want to see if they can step up and take the reins. If not them, who? I just want to see what that running game is going to look like heading into the spring and into the fall. So that's number 2 for me. Number 3, and I am going to in agreement with you. How's everything going to translate under the new leadership of Matt Campbell? Like how I do know that he's a players coach. A lot of people love playing for him at Iowa State.
Yeah.
Rocco Beck, obviously, the reason why he's there is because of him. He wants to play for him. It's like, how is that going to translate? Like, how is his leadership and his new coaching staff, how is it all going to translate, at Penn State? So heading into the spring and the culture that he's going to bring, that he's going to set up, and he's going to set up his own culture and system there. So how is that going to translate and mesh in the spring going into the fall? So that's really my spring outlooks, man. Deontay Lynn at number 1. How's the defensive system going to look there? Number 2, who's going to step up in the running game? Whether it's Martin, whether it's Wilson, how's it going to be? Is it going to be them? If not, who? Then number 3, obviously the culture that Matt Campbell can bring to Penn State, and how is that going to translate during the spring? I do know that they're kind of a wild card. They really are. They can either go, be a 9 to 10 win team or first year, or they can go have only under 7 wins. So, do you think they're the top wild card of the whole Big Ten?
No, I do not. I would definitely say on that front, I would definitely point back to Kyle Whittingham in Michigan. However, I think when it comes to Penn State, I see a lot of potential in the area of offensive continuity. I think you're bringing back a lot of guys, like you said, Rocco back. But ultimately, you're bringing back 3 of your 5 starters from your offensive line last year, which, again, was not a massive strong area, but it definitely was not a weak point of that team. You saw them really galvanize around Grunkmeyer late in the season, and I think that will be a big deal for them. But I think, playing off of that, if you have that offensive continuity to where you're giving Rocco Beck more time in the pocket, you limit the turnovers. You limit the turnovers if you're Rocco Beck. You're a little bit more of an explosive offense that you maybe were expecting out of James Franklin last year with guys that are now, heading to the pros and big names, Drew Aller being one of them. But I think that if you're able to sort of set the bar high and go, okay, well, the big thing under Matt Campbell is we win big games. Or he tried to set it at Ohio State or at Iowa State, excuse me. That's really the bar in which he has built his name. And I think if you're able to bring that into the Big Ten and that actually translates, and then you have someone like Deontay Lynn, who's, from the Rex Ryan coaching tree. He's going to run a lot of aggressive blitzes. He's going to be really, really, really impactful in terms of his linebacking core. He's going to be really impactful in terms of his decision-making on the front 7. I think that ultimately you could see success there. But if I had to guess, especially coming off of last year, I do think they're a wild card, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards a good season, but maybe not a great season.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're gonna figure it out. Their spring game, spring weekend. I don't know if it's a formal game. It's blue and white weekend. It's gonna be on April 25th. So we'll see in a month's time, and we'll go over our spring results on Penn State then in a month's time. So last but not least, as we wrap up our latest round of spring outlooks, an interesting team that, to me, I wanted to do a spring outlook on when I first announced and saw the hire of him being going there. But man, we got to go to East Lansing, Michigan. We have to do Michigan State. Could they reemerge? That's a big question that everyone's been asking. I know that NIL budgeting is severely underrated there. Surprisingly, everyone's going to say it's Michigan State. How about we chill out a little bit? Their NIL budget is not too bad at Michigan State. So, and I know that they're funding a little bit in the NIL budget now there too, which is pretty good. Jonathan Smith, apparently he wasn't really the guy, according to a lot of people, as in everyone has said that. It wasn't the guy. Now he went 5-7. This was his second year. Didn't have a good first year. It didn't seem like it was going anywhere in his second year. They wanted to, take the chance at getting a new head coach already, because literally as they got rid of him, it was announced like an hour later that they were in talks with Pat Fitzgerald for the job. So it seemed like they were eyeing Pat Fitzgerald from the time being to take over as the head coach. But
Yeah.
and then lo and behold, it was official within the next few days. Pat Fitzgerald was going to be the next head coach at Michigan State, former Northwestern coach. So it just seems like everybody's reemerging here. It's like, okay, yeah, Michigan State's reemerging now, and they're not coming along because you got Pat Fitzgerald, the former Northwestern coach, who actually did really well, made some in some key games, was pretty good, had some good seasons at Northwestern, right? What is he going to do with this is not a knock at Northwestern, because Northwestern's a good program, and a good school, but a bigger type program, if that makes sense, with more budgeting, more resources, better facilities. What is Pat Fitzgerald? What can he do with a bigger time job? What could he do? That was the whole thing there. I know Michigan State had a rough year last year. Now we're going into this year with the new era, so to speak. And it's like, okay, they may not win 7 to 8 games. They may not even make a bowl game. But this season is to prove a point that they are going to be on the right track and they're going into the right trajectory, right, under Pat Fitzgerald, now back as a head coach in college football. So I'll start with you, and you'll go ahead with your spring. What are you looking forward to seeing this spring out of them? I know Aiden Childs is no longer there. They're in a new QB battle right now, so that's a good take there too. But what are you looking forward to seeing for Michigan State this spring, and just Michigan State in general?
I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most, honestly, is just the question mark that they are. What are they going to be? They have lost 30-plus players to the portal. They're losing guys like Nick Marsh, Aiden Childs, Mekhi Frazier, all of their big offensive pieces from last year. And I say they were big offensive pieces, but at a 4-8 record under Jonathan Smith out of Oregon State, you're really not seeing the production from him that you were hoping for. You're really not seeing them return to their former glory, to return to the playoffs after making the 4 team. Only a few years back. It seems like a lifetime ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. And to see them fall in the way that they have under Jonathan Smith is something really interesting to watch. And I think Pat Fitzgerald was definitely, he was a name for sure. I think he had an interesting record at Northwestern, especially upon his exit there. There were a lot of, interesting allegations going on there with the hazing, and no need to go over that again. Everybody kind of knows the deal with that. But ultimately, what I noticed the most with that hire was that there were so many other coaches on the market, and Michigan State was really, it looked as though nobody was even batting an eye at them. And I think that is something really interesting to me when you look at the past and the history within that program, to see other programs get picked so far ahead of them. Even honestly, Matt Campbell to Penn State. I get that Penn State has kind of that same level of prestige that a program like Michigan State does, if not more. However, I think it's interesting that a program of the level of Michigan State was really not even getting looks. And I think you're bringing in Pat Fitzgerald. He's really been around a 500 coach. He resurrected a Northwestern program that was really, really in the gutter record-wise, especially in the recent years. They were really, bottom of the Big Ten. They were right down there with, your Purdue, your Wisconsin. They really weren't doing anything amazing, and then they've kind of come up and become a little bit of a more respectable program, especially under David Braun and their new quarterback, Preston Stone, who I, had the fortune of being able to go to high school with or go into middle school with as well. And so that was a great opportunity. But I think ultimately, when you look at Pat Fitzgerald, you're seeing a lot of interesting developments in terms of his recruiting. I think he's done okay for the most part. However, I don't see a lot of big names. I see a lot of big names exiting more so. And so I think ultimately, while I would like it to be 3 points, I think my 1 point for Michigan State really is just going to be, they are a question mark to me. I just am not sure where exactly they're headed. They've got an okay schedule. It's workable, especially with the beginning half of the year. But I think as you come toward the latter half of the year, you've got Washington and Oregon back to back. You've got Michigan before that. you're really looking at some tough games down the stretch. And I think really Michigan State fans should be very excited about the possibility of even just making a bowl game this year and just getting on the right track and just getting toward a winning record. Because when you start building with that, you see the ability for Pat Fitzgerald to begin to integrate winning in the program, and we'll see where that goes from there.
Oh, man, 100%. Pat Fitzgerald, he is a coach that, like you said, hanging around 500. He's not a terrible coach, obviously, by no means. And I think that's what makes it so interesting, because there was a lot of rumors, like not really rumors, but a lot of talk about him, like, okay, what could he do in Arkansas, right? A lot of people were talking about that. I know Ryan Silverfield is the new head coach at Arkansas, but I'm saying, like, what could he have done in Arkansas? So him being back in college football, to me, is cool. It's unique, and I think it's really interesting that he's back, especially at Michigan State. So I found that really, really cool. So I think, to me, because you get Joe Rossi back on the defense, you get Nick Sheridan coming from Alabama as the sole offensive coordinator there at Michigan State. So you're going to want to see how they do there. So I think that's my number one, honestly, is Nick Sheridan on the offense. I want to see how his offensive system is going to work there. I'm curious. I'm curious to see how it's going to be implemented around those players at Michigan State. So to me, that's number one. What I want to see from Michigan State heading into spring, how that offense is going to be how Nick Sheridan's offense is going to be implemented there. Number two, quarterback battle. I know they still got Eliseo Milivojevic from the backup freshman. He is still there. Well, he was backing up Aiden Childs last year. He's still there. You got Leo Hannon there, but you also have transfer Cam Fancher from UCF coming there, from UCF to Michigan State. So it's looking like you would think that Cam Fancher would win the job, but who knows? Like, who's going to win the quarterback job there, and who's going to separate themselves in that quarterback battle? So, hey, this is really our first quarterback battle that we mentioned in the spring outlook too. So, but besides Alabama's, but you look at that and it's like, okay, cool, right? So who's going to separate themselves at the quarterback spot? And then last but not least, which transfer is going to make an impact? That's what I want to know as well. If you look at the transfer impacts, I mean, you got guys like running back Cam Edwards from UConn, who transferred from UConn coming into Michigan State in the running back spot. Can he make an impact in the running game? Like, who can, out of the transfer portal additions that they've gotten so far, can step up and break out for this team, right? And then the last point, like you said, how is the leadership, because the leadership going to be, and how is the culture change going to be different at Michigan State now that Pat Fitzgerald and his guys are in there and his coaching staff's in there? So that's kind of like a point, a 3A, 3B kind of deal there too. So, I mean, that's really our spring outlooks for Michigan State, honestly. I mean, number one, offensive system under Nick Sheridan. Kind of want to see how that's going to go there. Number two, the quarterback battle, who's going to separate themselves there in that QB battle. Number three, point A, who is what's going to happen with the transfer impacts, guys like Cam Edwards, who's going to step up, who did transfer there, which of the transfer additions are going to step up and make a huge impact right off the bat, because I know they're looking for that. And then point B, how is the culture going to be different, than in previous years with, under from the Mel Tucker, going from Jonathan Smith, now going to Pat Fitzgerald? How is it going to look different from the previous regime? So curious to see about Michigan State's spring outlook. I know that their spring game is in a month's time, and it's April 18th and at noon Eastern, 11 Central. So we will give our spring outlooks, or spring results rather, on Michigan State in a month's time. Final thoughts before we wrap up everything on all four of these teams, kind of like we did this past Thursday with Ohio State, Michigan, USC, and Oregon. Out of the four teams, we can reword it different. Least and most likely, I guess, or least likely. Are you most worried about or least worried about?
So I'm going to be honest. I think you got to kind of leave Michigan State out of this one. I think Michigan State, we know what they're going to be. I think they're really going to be at that building block level of getting into a bowl game. So I would say limiting it to Penn State, Indiana, and Notre Dame I would say the one that I'm the most confident in right now by far is Indiana. I think Indiana really is a safe pick for the CFP, especially with what Signetti has brought to the table and what they're getting out of the portal. I think the one that I'm definitely the most worried about is Penn State. I think Penn State still has a lot of questions in the air, especially after the untimely departure of James Franklin. I think that there is some interesting narratives being built within the building about, okay, we're bringing in Matt Campbell. Are we going to be able to even match the success of Franklin? Because unfortunately, I think if he doesn't, Penn State is a very, very aggressive program. I think they're going to look elsewhere very, very soon. I don't think he's going to get the kind of leash that Franklin had to be able to build his recruiting classes, to be able to build his reputation within the program, his reputation with boosters. I think Matt Campbell's got a bit of a short timer. I think they're really looking for him to have a big impact right away. And I think the ultimate note I would have for them, especially, coming into the new regime under Matt Campbell, is you got to win the big games. That is what really killed Franklin's career at Penn State, and it's what ultimately could lead to the same fate for Matt Campbell. Is I think you're ultimately going to have to win those big games. You are going to have to win your Michigans. You're going to have to win your Ohio States when you have them. You are going to have to win these major battles that I'm not quite sure he is prepared to win yet.
Oh, absolutely, man. You got it. You did good. And you nailed it. I mean, I know that for me, I'm kind of concerned a little bit about Michigan State, obviously, but man, it is hard to deny what Notre Dame is building right now. That is just for me right now. I'm high on Notre Dame. I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to turn out, especially as we head in to the spring and fall. Man, thanks for joining us for another round of Spring Outlooks. I know we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. I know, because Thursday we have, coming up on Thursday, you're going to be with us on Thursday, but next Tuesday you probably won't be with us. But coming up on Thursday, you're going to be with us, and we can't wait to see you on Thursday. Guys, we're out of time. So a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen. There's some college football coverage presented by us. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Like each episode. Leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. All you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X and Instagram is at Pigskin_Frenzy, along with TikTok at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow up the pages there. You're going to get episode updates. You're going to get crazy takes from the prodigy of college football, man. And you're going to get more on Pigskin Frenzy on all those social channels. So go and follow at Pigskin_Frenzy. The website is www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. Man, we are so thankful for you guys each and every Tuesday and Thursday for tuning in to us on all platforms. Just tuning in to us, and we're so thankful because I know you guys want content like Spring Outlooks, like list episodes. So we're so thankful for you guys, and we're so thankful to be just bringing this to you because and for all your support, just for tuning in each and every week. Because without you guys, we would not be doing this show. Most importantly, without our Lord and Savior, we wouldn't be doing this show. So we give him all the glory and all the praise for delivering us and putting us in college football media. Because without him, we would not be talking about college football. But most importantly, we would not be doing the most important thing, and that's spreading his name and glorifying him across all platforms and exalting him across all platforms. So we give him all the praise and all the glory. So we give him everything. So we're so thankful for him, and we're so thankful for you guys as well. Guys, until Thursday, because on Thursday, we got some more spring outlooks. Trent's joining us once again. We are all 4 SEC teams once again. So we're going back to the SEC. We have Missouri. We have Florida, we have Tennessee, and we have Auburn. All 4 SEC teams. From them, Missouri, Florida, Tennessee, and Auburn, they're on tap next on Thursday as we continue our spring outlooks. And until Thursday, that's Trent Ritchie, our reoccurring guest correspondent. I'm Joel Norris, signing off. We will see you Thursday. For everybody out there, please and always, stay the course.